I believe we're in the midst of a loneliness crisis. It's become quite common nowadays for people to struggle with feelings of isolation. In fact, roughly 1 out of 3 people report having little to no friends or feelings of disconnection from people around them. If you're one of those people, if you're feeling lonely, you're not alone. It's a more common experience than you might realize. In the last decade, loneliness has been on the rise without showing any signs of slowing down. From the elderly who have nobody to talk to the young adults who are isolating themselves, nobody is immune. But why is loneliness even a problem, and why should you care? It needs to be noted that loneliness is a type of social pain. Similar to rejection, exclusion, heartbreak, losing a person close to you, etc. However, when people talk about these experiences, when they talk about social pain, they speak about it like the pain is metaphorical. If you break up with someone, sure, it feels bad, but that's not real pain, right? Breaking your leg, now that's real pain. But actually, that's not quite accurate. Back in 2002, Matthew Lieberman and his team conducted a very interesting study. They asked participants to lay down in fMRI scanners while they would play a simple ball tossing game on the computer. It looked like this. The participants controlled a hand, and whenever the ball came to them, they would decide who to throw it to next. The participants were led to believe that they were playing the game with 2 other real people over the internet who were also lying in scanners. But after a couple of minutes of repetitive tossing the ball back and forth, the game changed. The other 2 participants, who were really just a computer program, stopped throwing the ball to the original participant. Completely. The actual participant was just left watching what they believed to be 2 people throwing the ball to each other, while they themselves were being actively excluded. This went on for a couple of minutes, and every single time when the participant got out of the scanner, they showed a significant emotional response, either depression or anger. But what's interesting is all the brain data that scientists collected. There was a night and day difference in brain activity when participants had been included in the game and when they had been excluded. There were 2 key findings. Firstly, the same brain regions that register physical pain became active when people were left out of the game. And secondly, the more someone told the researchers they felt bad for being left out, the stronger the response was in those regions. So clearly, social pain is not just metaphorical. The same brain regions light up as when you are in physical pain. And if that study alone doesn't persuade you, consider the following. It turns out that if you give people Tylenol, all these effects go away. The same painkiller that you take for your headache actually works for your heartache, exclusion, and rejection. Important caveat here, do not try this at home. Tylenol is super toxic and 500 people a year die from Tylenol overdoses. These experiments were done in a controlled, proper lab-based way. But the takeaway here is that social pain is real pain. And for that reason, loneliness shouldn't be taken lightly. People who are in pain tend to see the world more pessimistically. Have you ever taken a walk in the woods and jumped back because you saw a stick on the ground, but thought it was a snake? Well, the lonely person sees those snakes all the time. Particularly, they see their social interactions as more negative. This in turn makes their behavior more defensive, they start building walls around them, and they start to avoid social interactions. This of course fuels and perpetuates their loneliness since they're pushing people away, often without even realizing it. It's a cycle of spiraling down, and the longer you're stuck there, the harder it is to get out of it. With that being said, our ability to feel lonely, to feel that social pain, is actually useful. After all, until very recently in the history of our species, a lonely human would have been quite literally at risk of death. We used to live in small communities, and if you were outcast from the tribe, it was very likely you would perish. So we developed this feeling that told us we should connect with others, as it will increase our chances of survival. If you were to remove the trigger for loneliness, it would be like shutting down hunger and thirst. Just like we have physical needs such as eating food and drinking water, so too we have to satisfy our psychological needs for friendship and community. And we need loneliness to tell us when or if our social needs aren't being met. But nowadays we live in a society where we don't necessarily need to get along with other people in order to survive. So why should we even listen to the loneliness signal? Well, feeling lonely occasionally is not necessarily a problem. Everyone feels that way from time to time, as it's a completely normal feeling. The issue is when we start to feel lonely often or most of the time. In fact, studies have shown that chronic loneliness can increase the risk of heart disease by 29% and the risk of stroke by 32%. It's a bigger killer than obesity and has been found to be as harmful as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. If you're surprised by this data, you're not the only one. I was as well. So even if you're doing everything else right, exercising frequently, eating properly, sleeping adequately, you might still be damaging your health simply by neglecting your social needs. Taking care of your body is important, but tending to your relationships is a form of self-care too. That is why you shouldn't ignore the loneliness signal. Now, it's important to know that being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. You may enjoy spending time by yourself and find it fulfilling, or you may feel lonely even when surrounded by friends. It is not simply a lack of people around you, but rather a feeling of disconnection from others. Like you can't relate to them, or they can't relate to you. So loneliness is more about having a gap between the social interaction and support you would like to have and what you're actually getting. It's also important to recognize that loneliness is different for each individual and can be influenced by factors such as introversion and extroversion. Some prefer to have dozens of loose connections, while others like to have just one person they're close to. It's best to focus on finding connections that fit your own personal needs and that feel meaningful and fulfilling to you. There is no point in trying to compare yourself to others or view making friends as a competition. So as long as it works for you, spending lots of time by yourself or with just one other person isn't necessarily bad. But what's the culprit behind the sharp rise in loneliness over the past decade? As it is with everything, there isn't just one thing, but rather there are multiple factors at play. I would say there are four main ones: limited time and limited energy, along with easy access to technology and social media. Each plays a role here. Firstly, nowadays we're constantly busy with something, so time has become scarce. Whether it's work, school, or other hobbies, it gets reflected on our social lives. Many choose not to spend the little free time they have socializing, but rather look for ways to get everything done or to get ahead. And if you're someone who is chasing greatness, you'll find that the road ahead can be particularly lonely, as socializing might not contribute to your success. For that reason, one of the first things that gets cut out is hanging out with the boys or the girls in order to free up more time. Secondly, after a long day of school or work, we might not have the necessary energy to socialize, and we might prefer to recharge in solitude instead. Hanging out with people, while it might be fun, can also be draining, especially if we've already been interacting with others throughout the day. And it takes two to tango. You might have the time and energy and be giving your 100%, but if the other person doesn't and can only put in their 10%, the interaction is simply going to be suboptimal. Then, as we age, it gets harder to make new friends and maintain current friendships. As we take on more responsibilities, we end up with less time and less energy for our relationships. There's simply a limited amount of fuel in the tank, and we prioritize spending it on other things instead. Thirdly, nowadays we have easy access to technology. 2 decades ago, we didn't have the internet like we have now, nor did we carry phones with us whenever we wanted. It's only recently that we have acquired the luxury of carrying a small computer in our pocket at all times. While these innovations have made our lives easier in a lot of ways, they have also made us more asocial, as we don't have to rely on other people as much as we used to. Now you don't have to ask for directions anymore, you can just Google it. And if you ever feel awkward or bored, you can just pull out your phone and drown out those unpleasant feelings, while 20 years ago you might have actually struck a conversation with someone. I mean, why look around if you have an endless stream of entertainment right in front of you? But because we have these distractions now, we simply don't have the same opportunities to practice and develop face-to-face social skills as we did before, which feeds into and perpetuates the loneliness cycle I mentioned earlier. The last factor is the rise of social media, which has replaced a lot of in-person interaction. We are now chronically online, and we're neglecting real life in pursuit of our digital one. But social media encourages less authentic versions of ourselves. Nobody posts on Instagram when they had just spent the whole weekend in their pajamas, eating pizza and binging on Netflix shows. Instead, we share highly curated happy moments, parties, and celebrations. When we see other people's highlights, we start to feel like we're missing out because it seems like they're constantly doing fun things. We forget that they don't share their dull moments online, but we know about every single uninteresting part of our life, which in turn makes us feel bad about ourselves. Also, for many people, their socialization now consists of liking and commenting. So it's not a surprise that studies have shown that the more time we spend on social media, the more likely it is that we'll feel lonely. So with all these 4 factors in mind, what can we do to combat loneliness? Well, first of all, we should look to spend less time on our devices. Social media and online interaction can be a good substitute if you don't have anyone in your life you can relate to. However, it's like junk food. It's better than starving, but it's not optimal. Now, I'm not saying that social media and technology are bad, they're just a tool after all. What's important is how we use it. It's just that nowadays we're not using it, but it's using us. So we should try to be more intentional with it instead. And secondly, we should look to invest some of our time and energy into deliberate socialization. One thing that we aren't really taught is that friendships and our social lives have to be maintained, and that it requires lifelong effort to do so. Many friendships form passively simply by being at the same place at the same time. When you're a kid, you're locked in a room with a bunch of other kids. And when you're an adult, you have co-workers who are just kinda there. You form bonds out of practicality. But when that isn't the case any longer, when someone moves, changes jobs or whatever, that friendship often falls apart. Which is a shame, unless of course both parties are willing to invest time and energy to maintain it. Close friendships aren't formed overnight. They are forged over time by sharing experiences with one another. It would be such a waste to lose a friend because you didn't put in any effort to keep the friendship alive. So please reach out to one of your friends today. Ask them what they're up to. Maintain that bond. It could even be an old friend you had in the past, but the friendship fizzled out. The thing is that most of us would like to hear from an old friend, but probably both of you are hoping that the other person reaches out first. Be the one to take that first step. Reach out to some of your old friends and see if they want to catch up. Best case scenario is you revive an old friendship. Worst case is you move on, but at least you won't have to wonder, what if? Of course, you could always try to form new friendships, but you have to take the initiative and actually put yourself into situations where social interaction could take place. However, don't go to a bar or club if you're not that kind of person. This is where people most often go wrong. They think they're forced to go to nightclubs or parties just because there are people there. But there's no point in going somewhere you don't enjoy being just to try and make friends. The friendships that you'll make there won't be as high quality, since you probably won't have that much in common. Instead, go to events and places that you're actually interested in. If you enjoy reading, start going to the library. If you enjoy sitting in the park, do that. There's a higher chance you'll meet someone similar to you there than somewhere you feel out of place. Also, there is nothing wrong with picking up a new hobby in order to make new friends. But make sure that you're actually interested in the hobby and that friendships aren't the only reason you picked it up. If you meet someone interesting and a friendship happens, great, but if not, you're still fine since you're enjoying the activity. With all of that being said, you shouldn't try to force your way into a friendship just because you feel lonely. While chronic loneliness is bad, toxic relationships and toxic friendships are even worse for you. Living in a high-conflict marriage, for example, turns out to be really bad for your health, even more so than going through divorce and feeling lonely. So you don't want to have friends and a relationship just for the sake of it. We don't have to, nor should we associate with people who make us miserable. Sometimes we just have to do the hard thing and cut the relationship off. I know it's difficult, especially if it's a family member or someone that was once close to you. But sometimes people just grow apart and should go in different directions. The world is filled with tons of potential good friends, but you won't get a chance to meet them if you keep spending time with toxic ones instead. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, chances are you're someone who's success-driven. And the path to greatness is usually a lonelier one, as not everyone is willing to make the necessary sacrifices to get there. However, it should be noted that many people that do achieve that success realize that it wasn't what they were actually looking for. One of the biggest predictors of happiness and well-being isn't how rich or how famous you get, but how good your social bonds are. It's no wonder that the two of the biggest regrets of the old and dying are, I wish I would have stayed in touch with my friends, and I wish I hadn't worked so hard. So it's up to you to decide for yourself if skipping out on friendship is a worthy trade-off. As for myself, I've realized that I should invest more time and energy into cultivating meaningful relationships. But those are just my thoughts. I also want to hear what you think. Do you think friendship is important? Do we need close friends, or are acquaintances enough? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Money. We all want to make more of it. But if possible, we also prefer to do it without putting in too much effort. And that is exactly what I want to talk about today. The usual way to generate money is by providing some sort of value to others by solving a problem through a product or service. But if you really want to reap the rewards, that alone isn't enough. You also have to be good at what you do. In almost every profession you look at, it's mostly people at the top who are making a good living. Those people are extremely good at their craft and therefore occupy the top 1% of the pyramid. And the more our society or the markets consider that profession to be valuable, the more money those individuals will make. Likewise, people who aren't as skilled at what they do or who picked a profession that isn't considered as valuable are obviously going to make a lot less. And those are the people at the bottom of the pyramid who are earning chump change. So it would make perfect sense to try and become one of the best in your field in order to make more money, right? That's what I believed for a long time, and for some people that can be a good strategy. But if you go down this path, you will soon realize that the competition at the top and on the way there can be absolutely brutal. You will be competing with other people who are putting every ounce of their time, energy and effort into their work, sometimes forgoing everything else. Not only that, but in some fields you have to be in the top 0.01% to see any good monetary results. For example, it is already insanely difficult to even get a chance to compete at the Olympics. But the difference in amount of money made between the person who finishes first and the person who finishes fourth is absolutely staggering. And sometimes the variance in their performance is in a tenth of a second. It's insane how cutthroat it can be. Now, don't get me wrong, being in the top 1% or even top 20% of a certain domain is often sufficient to make a really good living and not have to worry about money. The point I'm trying to make is that there is a huge earning gap between people who are at the top of their fields and those who aren't. Well, luckily over time I found out that you don't actually need to be the best to make good money. Instead, there's another way to go about it. One where you don't necessarily have to put in extreme effort, but it still allows you to increase your market value enough to make exponentially more. And it's quite simple. Instead of trying to become world-class in one skill, what you do is you add another complementary skill to your existing skill set. That's it. And the best part is you don't have to be extraordinary at that skill. Being good or just above average is often more than enough. That's because in a lot of cases, good plus good is equal to or even greater than excellent. And the more relevant skills you're able to combine, the more valuable you can make yourself. This is a very straightforward idea that a lot of people miss, but I believe it's the easiest option to increase your market value and earning potential significantly. Scott Adams, who's the creator of the Dilbert comic strip, named this concept talent stacking. As Scott himself puts it, he has poor art skills, mediocre business skills, good but not great writing talent, and a little bit of a sense of humor. If his skills are examined individually, he isn't world-class in any of them. Instead, he's quite average. However, Scott found a way to combine all those skills for a singular purpose, and thus he's able to create something not everyone else can. A timeless comic that makes people laugh, but that also brings in a lot of money. Naturally, there are a lot of artists that can draw better than Scott, and plenty of stand-up comedians who are funnier than him. But there aren't as many artists who are funny, nor are there that many comedians who can draw. By combining two or more skills together, Scott entered into a completely new field where there was a lot less competition, which allowed him to stand out. And that's why talent stacking works so well. If you're just average at one skill, nobody will notice you. You're just one of the many who can do the exact same thing. So naturally, those who are the best, the top 1% of that field, will get most of the opportunities that come along. However, those who are able to effectively combine two or more complementary skills together instantly become more valuable simply because they can do something that others can't or aren't willing to do. If you've ever wondered how some people who aren't as skilled as you or as smart as you make more money than you, this is it. They simply combine a few useful skills together and almost by default they become the top 1% of their new field simply because their skill set is so rare that there's barely any competition. And you could do the same. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy to do so, but it's definitely easier than betting everything on one skill. And the reason why it's easier is because it doesn't take that long to learn just enough about a topic and become decently good at it. On the contrary, due to diminishing returns, the deeper you dive into something and the better you get at it, the harder it is to make any meaningful improvement. An elite athlete could be training for years just to improve his mile time by a few seconds. Meanwhile, in just a few months, a beginner is able to improve his mile by minutes. And that's what you're aiming for. Improving in a skill just enough to be decently good at it, but not over-investing time and effort. So for example, let's say you wanted to learn how to become better at marketing. You could go to a university and get a marketing degree and you'll know 95% of all there is to know about it. But it's going to take you 4 years. Or you could take an easier approach and just read a few books on that topic or take an online course. You will learn 70% of all there is to know about marketing and it's going to take you maybe a few months. Sure, you won't be an expert, but you'll be above average, which is good enough. And in the time it would take you to learn an extra 10%, you could add another skill to your skill set. So while it might take a lifetime to master something, it usually takes just a few months to become above average at multiple skills and make yourself more valuable that way. That's why talent stacking is the easier path. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't bother mastering any skills, far from it. Being a generalist also isn't optimal because it usually means you're spread too thin in too many different directions and you don't make much progress in any of them. Instead, you want to pick a handful of skills that go well together and focus on those. But once you found a way to effectively combine them in a way that allows you to generate more money, you should dive deeper and even try to master them. However, when you're still in the process of combining skills, good enough will do. But the big question is, which skills should you spend time learning in order to add them to your talent stack? To answer that question, let me first tell a quick story. Back in primary school, I loved playing basketball. However, I didn't do any training, except for maybe shooting the ball at the hoop. And at that time, I had a friend who enjoyed playing soccer. But he had regular daily practice because he actually wanted to go pro. So when we played soccer at school, he obviously dominated and was the best at it. Now, when we played basketball, you would think that I was better than him. But my friend actually was faster, had more stamina, knew where the ball was going, and he understood team play all better than me. While he was training to be better at soccer, the skills he acquired at his practice also transferred to other sports and made him better at them. So unfortunately for me, his soccer training also made him good at basketball. The point I'm trying to make here is that the skills you learn in one area can often be applied in another. So the best skills that you should try to add to your talent stack are the ones that can be applied to multiple areas. Things like persuasion and clear communication, time management, another language, writing, marketing, understanding psychology and people's behavior. That's just to name a few, but there are many more to choose from. The reason I listed these options is because I believe they have a very broad range of applications. And even if your original plan with them doesn't work out, these skills are still going to be useful and will serve you greatly in other areas as well. So you can't go wrong by learning them. With that being said, I believe that the most important skill anyone can learn to make more money is understanding business and finance. Knowing business will significantly amplify the earning potential of whatever domain you're in. However, you need to have a skill set which you're decently good at in the first place, otherwise there's nothing to amplify. Now, the reason why understanding business is so important is because if you don't have at least some business skills, your earning potential is limited. You can be the best at what you do, but if you're just an employee, you're simply trading your time for a fixed salary, and you probably don't want to be doing that indefinitely. Eventually, you want to become a freelancer, self-employed, or a business owner. That way you can get paid based on the value and the results you provide, rather than getting a fixed salary based on the time you spend working. And you might know some people that are in the same domain as you, but aren't really that good at what they do. However, because they have solid business skills and are running their own business, they're able to amplify their earnings and make a good living. This is why you want to have some business skills yourself, so you can eventually make a shift from an employee to a business owner, which will allow you to amplify and scale your income instead of it being capped. But you shouldn't be fooled. Business isn't just a simple skill. It's actually already a complete talent stack. Someone who's good at business is already good at multiple different things, such as negotiation, risk management, accounting and taxes, leverage, outsourcing and delegating, money management. You get the point. They don't necessarily have all these skills, but a lot of them are present. However, this is also probably the most useful stack you can have because it can be transferred and applied in any field. The industry you're in doesn't matter, the business principles will be almost the same. Sure, there might be some differences, but just like my friend switched from soccer to basketball, a lot of it will transfer over. And this added flexibility is another reason why I think talent stacking is so great. Nowadays, things are constantly changing, and you should expect changes in your industry as well. If you're only able to do one thing, chances are that a shift in your domain might negatively impact you, as it is much harder to pivot if you do things the same way all the time. But if you have other skills to fall back on, then the pivot is not only easier, but it can also help you catapult yourself to the top faster, as you're better equipped to handle the changes compared to others. This is why it makes sense to build other flexible skills and not just focus on one. Also, the world isn't the only thing that's changing, but over time we change as individuals as well. What we like today is not necessarily what we'll enjoy 10 years from now, so it's wise to prepare accordingly. If you made it this far into the video, you're probably convinced that talent stacking does indeed work for most people. Unless you know you can make it to the top 1% with just one skill, it's simply better to build and combine multiple skills together. And this is the path that I personally took. The Better Than Yesterday channel you're watching right now is actually another example of talent stacking. I'm not world class at anything I do here. My animation skills are alright, my storytelling is decent, research and information are solid, SEO is okay. Individually, you will see that I'm nowhere near at being the best in any of these skills. However, once you add all of them together, the end product is kinda unique. And I'm able to have moderate success because of it, even if I'm not the best and even if I'm not working on it full time. So you can clearly see that there is something to it. Now, I have a challenge for you. I want you to think about your current skills and see if you could potentially combine them in a way that would make you more unique and valuable. If you don't think you can combine them in any way, then think of a new skill that could amplify or improve your current skill set the most. I want you to consume as much information about that skill as possible for the next 1 week in order to get more familiar with the new topic. This will allow you to really think about the potential ways those skills could be used and monetized. I say 1 week because that's not too much of a commitment. And if you really dive into it every single day for a week straight, that's a sufficient amount of time for you to learn a ton of new stuff and apply it in a way that makes you at least a little more valuable. Remember, it doesn't take long to learn just enough. Worst case, after that 1 week is over, you will walk out having learned something new about the skill or about yourself that could be useful later on. But perhaps you will learn how to combine that skill with your current skill set in a unique way and find a way to monetize it. You really have nothing to lose. So, that's my challenge to you. Find and create your unique talent stack. Oh, and just a friendly reminder, don't procrastinate. Make sure to start today.
If you're similar to most people, you may have formed certain undesirable money habits. However, mastering these crucial concepts at an early stage can set you on the path to wealth. Learning these concepts at a young age can significantly increase your chances of achieving financial success, while those who do not may continuously face difficulties. It's imperative to grasp these important money concepts early on and make sure to stick around until the end for a game-changing concept that will transform your perspective on money. Whether you're interested in personal finance, investing, or just wanted to learn more about money, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if you found this video helpful. Let's work together to boost your budget and take control of your financial future. Net worth is a useful measure of your financial health, as it provides valuable insights into your financial situation. Essentially, it is the sum of all your assets, including bank accounts, retirement accounts, and other items of value minus any debts you owe. Tracking your net worth from an early age and monitoring any changes can be highly beneficial, as it allows you to track your progress over time. Even if your net worth is currently negative, keeping track of it can help you see improvements year on year, which may not be as visible on a day-to-day basis. Inflation is not just about the decreasing purchasing power of the dollar. There are other factors to consider. As the price of goods rises, the dollar loses its value, and after 1 year of inflation at 5%, the dollar is only worth 95% of its original value. In about 14 years, the value of a dollar is cut in half. It's important to keep in mind the effect inflation has on your income when negotiating your pay. Even a 5% pay adjustment doesn't necessarily mean an increase in pay, especially when inflation is at 5%. Leaving cash uninvested in a bank account means it's likely losing value to inflation, and a savings account that pays 3% interest when inflation is at 5% means you've lost 2% of purchasing power over a year. This is not significant for small amounts of money over short periods, but something to consider over extended periods. In terms of where to invest your money, it's important to consider liquidity, which refers to how easily and quickly you can access your funds. Cash or money in a bank account is highly liquid since you can access it easily and at no cost. However, retirement accounts such as 401k or IRA have limited liquidity since they're designed for long-term investments, and you may incur fees if you withdraw early. Additionally, investments that are subject to fluctuation in value may result in losses if you need to withdraw early. While investing is important, it's crucial to have adequate savings in place so you won't have to liquidate investments unexpectedly. Understanding interest is crucial when it comes to saving and borrowing money. Earning interest on your savings means your money is working for you, which is beneficial. However, when you borrow money, you must pay interest to the lender for the ability to use their money. Whether paying interest is good or bad depends on the situation. For instance, paying low interest rates can be beneficial if it allows you to generate more income than the interest you're paying. For example, borrowing money at 5% interest to purchase a rental property that will provide a 10% return on your investment is a good deal. Similarly, financing a car at a 0% interest rate and investing the lump sum instead can also be beneficial. However, paying high interest rates is irresponsible and should be avoided. Compound interest is a powerful tool for building wealth that grows exponentially over time. As Einstein famously said, "Those who understand it can earn from it, while those who don't end up paying for it." With compound interest, the interest you earn on your investment also earns interest, leading to significant growth over an extended period of time. By utilizing this concept, you can build a substantial retirement fund without needing to save millions of dollars. If more people understood and utilized compound interest, they could start investing even small amounts of money consistently to benefit from its incredible potential. It's important to understand that market crashes or bear markets, where stock prices drop by 20% from their all-time highs, are a normal occurrence and shouldn't trigger panic selling. Investors should expect these situations from time to time and be aware of them before investing significant amounts of money. Since 1928, the S&P 500 has experienced 22 drops of 20% or more, with an average of one happening every 4.5 years. While it takes the market an average of 388 days to recover from a bear market, it's important to remember that these situations are not unusual and don't indicate the end of the world. If your goal is to build wealth, selling everything in a panic is usually not the best course of action. When it comes to investing, it's important to know your risk tolerance, which refers to your ability to handle fluctuations in the market. For instance, Some investors feel comfortable taking on higher risk and might view a market crash as an opportunity to be more aggressive with their investments. Others may be more risk-averse and avoid investing altogether. However, risk tolerance is not solely based on emotions, but also on factors such as age and future earnings. Too much risk can lead to significant losses, while too little risk can hinder the benefits of compound interest. Considering that the S&P 500 drops by 20% or more approximately every 4.5 years, it's important to find a balance between risk and potential rewards. Target date funds or S&P 500 funds could be suitable options to strike that balance. The concept of the time value of money suggests that money today is worth more than money in the future because it has the potential to grow and compound. When you have money today, you can either spend it or invest it to grow. Investing money can result in a much larger amount that can provide for you in the future. For example, investing $100 in the S&P 500 for 30 years with a 10% average annual return would be worth over $600 even after adjusting for a 4% inflation rate. By understanding this concept, you'll be more cautious before making unnecessary purchases. These fundamental money principles are not difficult to understand, but it's better to learn them early on so that you won't regret not knowing them in the future. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or wanted to learn more about finance, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more simple finance tips.